Whitfield-Beauchamp, keep your hands where I can see them.
My hands are right here. Please tell me what this is about.
$1.2 million drained from 11 elderly customer accounts over 5.
For years, people trusted Jamal DeAndre Whitfield-Beauchamp with their life savings. 11 of them. Every single one of them was wrong too.
I have served this branch for 14 years. There has to be a
92
mistake.
cashier's checks at $9,000.
The man in this footage spent 14 years building a reputation. He was about to lose all of it inside the next 10 minutes. $1,206,000. 11 elderly customers. 5 years of fees that did not exist on any Wells Fargo product sheet anywhere in the country. By the end of this conversation, Jamal Whitfield-Beauchamp would be walked out of the Beaverton branch he managed in front of every employee he had hired, trained, or promoted. The investigation that brought 2 FBI agents and 1 bank fraud investigator into his glass-walled office that morning had been running for 66 days. They already knew. They had the spreadsheets, they had the cashier's checks, and they had the one line of text, 8 words long, that he had typed himself hundreds of times into the memo field of accounts belonging to people who trusted him. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. Have you ever sat across a desk from a banker, a financial advisor, a branch manager, somebody with that quiet authority, and just signed where they told you to sign? Drop a yes or a no in the comments and tell me about it. And if you're new to the channel, hit subscribe. We cover the cases the local news buries on page 6 every single week. Jamal DeAndre Whitfield-Beauchamp was born in Portland, Oregon in 1981, the second of 3 children to a father who drove long haul for Consolidated Freightways out of the Swan Island terminal and a mother who worked the swing shift in medical records at Emmanuel Hospital. The family lived in a small ranch house off northeast Killingsworth, in a neighborhood that, in the early 80s, was one of the few in the city where a working black family could buy and hold property without the bank walking them backward to the door. His father was the one who opened his first savings account. He took the boy, age 8, to a U.S. bank branch on Northeast Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, sat him in a chair across from a teller named Mrs. Reyes, and let him hand over $42 in birthday cash. Jamal would tell that story for the rest of his life. The way the teller counted the bills twice. The way she slid a passbook across the counter with his name typed on the cover. The way his father said, on the walk back to the truck, that the most important thing a black man in Portland could ever do was learn how a bank actually worked. He took it literally. He was a quiet kid. Teachers at Vernon Elementary noted in his 4th grade report card that he was unusually attentive when adults speak and shows a strong sense of order. He played basketball in the driveway with his older brother and lost more often than he won. He read every issue of Money magazine his mother brought home from the hospital break room, pretending he understood it long before he did. He graduated from Jefferson High School in 1999 with a 3.4 GPA and a reputation among his teachers as the boy who actually listened. He enrolled at Portland State University on a partial financial aid package, working 28 hours a week at a Safeway on Northeast Weidler to cover the rest. He majored in finance. He was the only black student in 2 of his upper division classes. He kept his head down and his grades up. In the spring of 2003, 4 months before graduation, he submitted an application to Wells Fargo for a teller position at a branch on Northwest 23rd Avenue. Starting wage was $11.25 an hour. The branch manager who hired him, a woman named Linda Hashimoto, would later tell investigators that Jamal was the most polished entry-level candidate she had ever interviewed. Well-spoken, she wrote on his evaluation, detail-oriented, will follow procedure to the letter. She was right about all 3, She did not know yet that the third one was the most important. He married Aisha Beauchamp in 2007. She was an oncology nurse at Oregon Health and Science University, a year older than him, the daughter of a retired postal carrier from Northeast Portland. They bought a 3-bedroom Craftsman in Tigard in 2010 with a 30-year fixed mortgage and a baby on the way. They had 3 children in the next 6 years, a daughter, then 2 sons. Jamal hyphenated his name to hers when their first child was born, a deliberate gesture to honor a wife he had quietly told friends was the smarter one in the marriage. At Wells Fargo, he climbed. Teller in 2003. Personal banker in 2006. Assistant branch manager in 2012. Branch manager of the Beaverton location in 2018. He passed his Series 6 in 2009, his Series 63 the following spring, and obtained an Oregon insurance producer license in 2013. Inside the Oregon district, he became the de facto wealth and trust point of contact for older customers. The manager you handed your retirement accounts to, the one who walked you through your CD ladder, the one whose name was on the letterhead of the quarterly statements that arrived in the mail. In the regional district, his promotion to branch manager in 2018 was treated as a milestone. He was, at that point, the highest tenured black branch manager in the Oregon footprint. The bank's regional communications team began featuring him in local community event photography, a youth financial literacy day at the Beaverton Library, a small business expo in Hillsboro, a back-to-school supply drive in North Portland. He coached his youngest son's AAU basketball team on the weekends. He served as a deacon at a small Pentecostal church on the east side of Portland. His wife joked, in private, that he had 3 full-time jobs and was excellent at all of them. For a decade, all of it was true. His older customers loved him. He knew their birthdays. He knew their grandchildren's names. He knew which Sunday service they attended at which church. He remembered which of them preferred their statements mailed and which preferred them held at the branch for pickup. The widow he would eventually steal $312,000 from referred to him in conversations with her daughter as that nice young man at my bank. She was 81 years old. He had known her, by then, for 9 years. A modern Wells Fargo retail branch is not, despite appearances, primarily a place where money is moved. It is a place where trust is administered. The Beaverton branch Jamal managed handled, on an average day, somewhere between 300 and 400 transactions across 2 teller windows, 3 personal banker desks, a drive-up lane, and a small private office at the back used for wealth and trust appointments. The branch held approximately 900 active customer relationships. Roughly 120 of those relationships involved customers over the age of 70. 46 of those involved customers over the age of 75 with money market or certificate of deposit balances exceeding $100,000. Those 46 customers were, in the language of internal Wells Fargo training documents, the branch's high-trust legacy relationships. They were also, in the same documents, identified as the customer segment with the highest internal fraud risk profile in the entire retail bank. The systems built to protect those 46 customers were, on paper, extensive. Dual authorization for any cashier's check above a certain threshold. Quarterly statement reviews, internal compliance audits, the federal currency transaction report requirement for any single cash transaction over $10,000 under 31 U.S.C., Prayer Fee 5330, the Bank Secrecy Act, the Elder Justice Act. A separate Wells Fargo Elder Financial Abuse training module that every employee, including the branch manager, was required to complete annually. In practice, The systems all funneled through one person. The branch manager was the dual authorization signatory on cashier's checks issued at his own branch. The branch manager reviewed the quarterly statement holds for customers who had requested branch pickup. The branch manager was the first point of contact for any internal compliance question that escalated past the teller line. The branch manager set the schedule for the personal bankers, decided which of them met with which customers, and approved the customer relationship notes that fed into the bank's internal CRM system. The branch manager was, in other words, the gate, and the gate was Jamal. For most branch managers, that level of access is paired with the kind of internal scrutiny that catches problems early. Random cashier's check audits, surprise compliance walkthroughs, peer review sampling. The Beaverton branch had received satisfactory or above satisfactory ratings on every internal audit it had undergone since 2018. What the audits did not look at, what the system was not designed to catch, was a fee, a line item on a customer statement that was internally consistent, mathematically correct, and named in language that sounded exactly like a real Wells Fargo product. A line item that required no signature, no dual authorization, no compliance flag, because it appeared, on its face, to be the bank itself charging the customer for a service the bank itself was providing. The gate was the manager was Jamal, and Jamal had figured out what the gate did not check. The first unauthorized transaction Wells Fargo investigators would later identify took place on the 11th of February, 2019. The customer was a 74-year-old retired Tektronix engineer with a money market account holding just under $400,000. The transaction was a quarterly debit of $1,420, posted to the account with the memo line, WF Premier Advisory Quarterly. The funds moved from the customer's money market account into a branch suspense account, and from the suspense account, 3 business days later, into a personal checking account in Jamal's wife's maiden name. The customer never noticed. His monthly statement showed the line item, in the same font, the same column, the same formatting as every legitimate Wells Fargo fee he had ever paid. He was a careful man. He read his statements. He filed them in a banker's box in his garage. The line item read like a real product. He assumed, as anyone would, that it was. The second unauthorized transaction posted 4 days later, then a third. By the end of 2019, Jamal had identified 6 customers whose statement review behavior, account size, and personal trust in him made them, in the cold language of the federal indictment, high suitability targets. None of them lived with adult children. None of them used online banking. All of them had been customers of his branch for at least 7 years. All of them had referred to him, at some point, in branch records as like a son. The WF Premier Advisory Quarterly fee was the foundation. It was the steady, quiet baseline of the embezzlement, the part that ran on autopilot, the part that did not require him to do anything in any given quarter except let the recurring debit post on the schedule he had built into the system. On top of that foundation, he built 3 more layers. The second layer was cashier's checks. Wells Fargo policy required dual authorization for any cashier's check above a defined branch threshold. As branch manager, Jamal was one of the 2 authorized signers. Over 5 years, beginning in mid-2019, he issued approximately $612,000 in cashier's checks against 8 different elderly customer accounts, all of them payable to Whitfield Brothers Landscaping LLC, a small business registered in Vancouver, Washington, in the name of his wife's brother. The brother-in-law, a 41-year-old man named Marcus Beauchamp, ran a real landscaping crew with 3 employees, a real EIN, a real bank account, a real and almost completely unused company website, and 0 contracts with any Wells Fargo customer. The cashier's checks deposited into Whitfield Brothers Landscaping cleared, and the funds were withdrawn, in cash, in amounts under $10,000 at a time, over the following weeks. The third layer was structuring. This was the most deliberate of the 4. Beginning in 2021, Jamal began issuing cashier's checks of $9,400 drawn against customer accounts, payable to one of 2 used car dealerships in Vancouver, Washington. Both small operations, both run by acquaintances of his brother-in-law, neither of them ever having sold a vehicle to any Wells Fargo customer. The dealership owners cashed the checks, kept a flat fee of approximately $400 each, and returned the remainder to Jamal in cash. The amount, $9,400, was chosen specifically to fall below the federal $10,000 currency transaction report threshold. Over 3 years, he ran approximately 22 of these structured cashier's checks, totaling roughly $204,000. The federal statute against this, 31 U.S.C., paragraph 5324, was something he had completed mandatory training on every year since his promotion. The 4th layer was the catch-all, approximately $78,000 across more than 30 smaller transactions, refund reversals, fee adjustments, account maintenance corrections, each of them small enough to disappear into the routine noise of a busy branch, each of them traceable, in retrospect, to an account he controlled. All of it ran underneath a life that looked, from the outside, completely intact. He coached his youngest son's AAU team every Saturday morning at a Tigard Middle School gym. He served as a deacon at a Pentecostal church off Northeast Gleason, where he and his wife had been members for 12 years. He attended every parent-teacher conference. He coached his daughter through her freshman algebra homework at the kitchen island. He told his wife, on multiple occasions, that the only thing he was worried about was their oldest college fund, and that he was on top of it. His wife managed the family's day-to-day finances and never asked about his individual brokerage accounts or the small business checking account he had opened in his wife's maiden name at a small credit union in Hillsborough in late 2019. She had no reason to ask. He told her it was for an old freelance consulting arrangement. The credit union was 22 miles from the Beaverton branch. The account, by April of 2024, held just over $400,000. Quick check-in. If you're still with me, take half a second and drop a comment below. I want to know what state you're watching from. It tells me where this kind of story actually lands, and if you're not subscribed yet, hit the button. We do not let cases like this get buried, and that means we need the algorithm to know you're here. Now let's get to how this finally cracked open. The widow's name does not appear in the public charging documents. The court papers identify her only as Victim 1. Her late husband had been a Tektronix mechanical engineer who, in 1994, opened a brokerage account at a regional firm that was acquired through a long chain of mergers by Wells Fargo advisors. When her husband died in 2017, the account migrated to her sole control. By February 2019, it held approximately $1.1 million across a money market sleeve, 2 CDs, and a small equity position. By April 2024, it held approximately $790,000 after market growth and after, though she did not know it, $312,000 in unauthorized debits posted under the line item WF Premier Advisory Quarterly. She was 81 years old, She lived alone in a one-story house in Aloha, Oregon, that she and her husband had bought in 1981. She read her quarterly statements at her kitchen table with a magnifying glass and a yellow legal pad. She trusted Jamal completely. Every quarter, when her statement was held at the branch for pickup, she made the 7-mile drive in her 2009 Buick to the Beaverton location, sat across from him at his desk, and let him walk her through the document line by line. He pointed at the lines he wanted her to see. He moved past the lines he did not. The line he never pointed at was WF Premier Advisory Quarterly. When she did, on 3 separate occasions across 5 years, ask him what that one was, he told her, different versions each time, that it was the management fee for the wealth platform her husband's old account had been migrated into, that it was non-negotiable, that every brokerage account at the bank carried it, that all of her old neighbors who banked with him paid the same one. She wrote a small note on her legal pad each time and underlined it. She never asked again. The catalyst was not her. It was the daughter of a different victim entirely. In early March of 2024, the daughter of one of Jamal's elderly customers, a 76-year-old retired Multnomah County administrator, flew down from Seattle for a weekend to begin organizing her father's estate documents. He had been diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's the previous winter. The daughter, a 39-year-old senior corporate accountant for a logistics company at the Port of Seattle, did the kind of work where, when she sat down at a kitchen table with 5 years of bank statements and a cup of coffee, she did not stop until every line item reconciled. She pulled 5 years of her father's monthly statements out of a banker's box in his garage. She built a spreadsheet. She categorized every recurring debit. By the end of Sunday afternoon, she had identified exactly one line item that did not reconcile with any product her father had ever signed up for. WF Premier Advisory Quarterly, debiting at quarterly intervals, totaling approximately $48,000 over the period. Her father had no advisory product. He had a checking account, a savings account, a small CD, and a money market account. He had never signed an advisory agreement of any kind. She called the Wells Fargo customer service line on Monday morning from her office in Seattle. The first-tier representative searched the bank's product catalog for Premier Advisory Quarterly and could not find it. The representative escalated to a supervisor. The supervisor could not find it either. The supervisor flagged it to internal investigations the same day. That phone call is the moment Jamal's life ended. He just did not know it yet. He had 3 more weeks. The Wells Fargo internal investigations team that opened the file in the second week of March 2024 was based in Charlotte, North Carolina. The lead investigator was a former FBI white-collar agent who had been with the bank's internal team for 9 years. Her first action was to query the bank's general ledger for every transaction posted under the memo line, WF Premier Advisory Quarterly, across the entire retail bank, going back 10 years. The query returned 241 matching debits, every single one of them traced to a single branch, the Beaverton, Oregon, location managed by Jamal Whitfield-Beauchamp. The second query traced the destination of the funds. Each debit had moved into a branch suspense account, and from there into one of 2 end accounts, a personal checking account in Aisha Beauchamp's maiden name at a Hillsborough credit union, or the operating account of Whitfield Brothers Landscaping LLC at a Vancouver, Washington bank. The investigator pulled the LLC's filing record from the Oregon Secretary of State. The registered agent was Marcus Beauchamp. The investigator pulled Marcus Beauchamp's relationship to Jamal through the bank's internal HR system. He was listed as Jamal's brother-in-law and his emergency contact. The third query pulled 5 years of cashier's check authorizations at the Beaverton branch. The investigator filtered for checks signed by Jamal as the dual authorization signatory and payable to Whitfield Brothers Landscaping. She found 47 of them, totaling approximately $612,000. She filtered for cashier's checks of $9,400 exactly, drawn against elderly customer accounts. She found 22 of them. By the 3rd week of March, the investigator had built a spreadsheet that ran to 6 tabs and 114 pages. She had cross-referenced every transaction against the product catalog, the customer agreement files, and the branch's CRM notes. She had flagged 11 elderly customers whose accounts had been drained, in aggregate, by approximately $1,206,000 across 5 years. On the 2nd of May, she briefed Wells Fargo's chief compliance officer. On the 7th, the bank briefed the FBI Portland field office. On the 9th, Jamal Whitfield-Beauchamp received a call at the Beaverton branch from his district vice president, asking him to come into the regional office in downtown Portland for what was described on the call as a routine quarterly check-in. He drove the 7 miles into downtown that afternoon in a charcoal suit and a navy tie, parked in the regional building's underground garage, and rode the elevator up to the 18th floor. He was suspended without pay that afternoon. He was told the bank had identified significant irregularities in the Beaverton branch's cashier's check authorizations. He was told he was not to return to the branch. He was told to surrender his branch keys and his corporate laptop. He was not told, that afternoon, that the FBI had been briefed. He drove home to Teagard that evening. He told his wife, in their kitchen, that there had been an audit issue at the branch and that he had been asked to take administrative leave while it was reviewed. He told her it was a procedural matter. He told her he was confident it would be resolved within the week. She believed him. She had no reason not to. He spent the next 66 days waiting. The FBI did not knock on his door at dawn. They did not need to. They knew exactly where he was every day of the suspension. They had the bank's full file. They had a sealed indictment, returned by a federal grand jury in the District of Oregon on the 11th of July 2024, charging him on 25 counts. They came for him on the morning of the 14th of July at his home in Teagard at 7:12 in the morning. His wife was on a long shift at OHSU. His 3 children were at their grandmother's house for the weekend. He was alone in the kitchen, in athletic shorts and a faded gray t-shirt, drinking coffee and reading the Oregonian on his iPad, when 2 FBI special agents and 1 Wells Fargo internal investigations representative came up the walkway and rang the bell. The lead agent was a 47-year-old veteran of the Portland field office's white-collar squad. The second was a younger agent who had transferred in from the Sacramento office the previous fall. The bank's representative, the same woman who had built the 114-page spreadsheet, stood a half-step behind them on the porch with a sealed evidence folder. He answered the door. He was, the lead agent's report would later note, calm, oriented, and verbally cooperative. He let them in. They sat in his living room. The lead agent read him his rights. He waived them. He spoke on his own initiative for approximately 14 minutes before invoking counsel. The transcript of that conversation is in the public docket. Mr. Whitfield-Beauchamp, do you understand why we are here this morning? I think I do. I think I've been thinking about it for 2 months. Can you tell me what you think we're here about? The Beaverton branch, the accounts. I know what this is. Are you willing to answer some questions on the record before we go any further? I'd like to talk. I've been wanting to talk since May. My lawyer is going to tell me not to. Before he tells me that, yes, I want to talk. Did you authorize unauthorized debits from elderly customer accounts at the Beaverton branch under the memo line WF Premier Advisory Quarterly? Yes, I did. How many customers? 11, I think. I never wrote it down. I knew the number was around there. Why did you do it, sir? I'm not going to answer that one. Not the way you want me to. There isn't a reason that makes it make sense. There was a first one, and then there was a second one. And by the third one, I had already decided I was the kind of person who did this. Mr. Whitfield-Beauchamp, was your wife aware of any of this? No. God, no. Please. She has nothing to do with this. None of it. I want that on the record. Was your brother-in-law aware? I'd like to call my lawyer now. I'm sorry. I'd like to stop. The interview ended at 7:41 in the morning. He was placed in handcuffs in his own front entryway. The lead agent walked him to the unmarked sedan at the curb. His next-door neighbor, a retired Nike marketing executive who had known him for 8 years, was watering her hydrangeas at the property line. She watched him get into the back of the car. She told a reporter from the Oregonian 3 days later that she had not believed it was him until she saw his face. The federal indictment was unsealed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Oregon at 1:15 in the afternoon on the 14th of July, 2024. The charges were extensive. 11 counts of bank fraud under 18 U.S.C., PEC 1344. 8 counts of aggravated identity theft under 18 U.S.C., Port 1528A, each of those counts carrying a consecutive 24-month statutory minimum, which, stacked, became the structural driver of the eventual sentence. 4 counts of money laundering, 1 count of structuring under 31 U.S.C., paragraph 5324, 1 count of conspiracy with his brother-in-law, Marcus Beauchamp, who was charged separately and who pleaded guilty in late 2024 to 2 lesser counts in exchange for cooperation. Wells Fargo terminated Jamal for cause that same afternoon. The bank issued a public statement committing to make all 11 affected customers whole pending restitution and announced an internal review of branch-level cashier's check authorization procedures across the Pacific Northwest region. The widow, victim 1, received a personal phone call from the bank's regional president the next morning. The Seattle-based daughter, whose spreadsheet had started everything, received a thank you letter from the chief compliance officer. His defense attorney was a former assistant U.S. attorney named Rachel Morgenstern, hired on retainer by his wife's family the day after the arrest. Morgenstern was, by reputation, one of the 3 best white-collar defense attorneys in the Pacific Northwest. She negotiated for 6 months. In early 2025, Jamal pleaded guilty to 6 of the original 25 counts, 3 counts of bank fraud, 2 counts of aggravated identity theft, and the structuring count, in exchange for the dismissal of the remaining counts and his cooperation against his brother-in-law and against the 2 used car dealership owners, both of whom were subsequently charged in separate informations. Sentencing was scheduled for later in 2025. The federal sentencing guidelines range, calculated under the November 2224 Guidelines Manual, accounted for the loss amount above $1 million, the elderly victim enhancement under U.S.C. paragraph 3A1.1b, the abuse of position of trust under U.S.C. paragraph 3B1.3, and the sophisticated means enhancement under U.S.C. paragraph 2B1.1 over B10. The 2 retained counts of aggravated identity theft each carried by statute a mandatory consecutive 24-month sentence, 48 months stacked on top of the guideline range before any other count was even considered. The widow, victim 1, submitted a written victim impact statement to the court ahead of the sentencing hearing. Her daughter read it into the record on her behalf. The relevant portion reads, "My husband worked for 36 years to build the account that this man took from. He died in our home in 2017, holding my hand. The man at the bank knew that. I told him that the first time we met. He looked me in the eye and told me he would treat the account the way my husband would have wanted. For 5 years he sat across from me at his desk, and he pointed at the lines he wanted me to see, and he passed his hand over the line where he was taking my husband's work, a few $1,000s at a time. I am 81 years old. I do not have 36 more years to rebuild this. He knew that too." The presiding judge, a senior U.S. district judge with 22 years on the federal bench, addressed Jamal directly at sentencing. The relevant portion of the bench statement reads, "Mr. Whitfield-Beauchamp, the offense of which you have been convicted is among the most serious this court sees, not because of the dollar amount, although the dollar amount is substantial, but because of the architecture of the betrayal. You did not steal from strangers. You stole from people who had, by every measure available to a banker, given you their complete trust. You stole from a widow whose late husband's brokerage account you walked her past, line by line, for 5 years, while you drained it. You stole specifically from the segment of your customer base least able to protect itself, and you did so under the cover of a fee description that you typed yourself that does not exist in your employer's product catalog, that no honest banker has ever charged. The court has read every letter submitted on your behalf. The court does not doubt that you have been, in many of the rooms of your life, a good man. The court is required, today, to weigh that good against the deliberate, sustained, sophisticated harm you inflicted on 11 people who deserved the banker you presented yourself as. The sentence the court is about to impose reflects that weight. Jamal Whitfield-Beauchamp was sentenced in 2025 to a federal prison term significantly in excess of 14 years, followed by 5 years of supervised release, restitution of the full $1.2 million jointly and severally with his brother-in-law, and a permanent ban from employment in any federally insured banking institution under 12 U.S.C. Parf. 1829. He was designated to FCI Sheridan, a low-security federal correctional institution in Yamhill County, Oregon, approximately 38 miles from the Craftsman House in Tigard he had bought in 2010, and from the wife and 3 children who still lived inside it. His earliest projected release date placed his children, by then, well past their high school graduations. The Beaverton branch he managed for 6 years was closed for 2 weeks in the summer of 2024 for what Wells Fargo described publicly as a comprehensive operational review. When it reopened, none of the original personal bankers, tellers, or assistant managers from his tenure remained at the location. The widow moved her remaining accounts in late 2024 to a credit union 3 miles from her house in Aloha. She told her daughter, on the phone, that she was finished with banks for the rest of her life. Her daughter did not argue with her. The line item that ended it all, WF Premier Advisory Quarterly, was added in mid-2024 to an internal Wells Fargo training module on elder financial abuse, used as the textbook example of a manufactured fee description. The module is now mandatory for every new branch manager hired into the Pacific Northwest region. The line is presented in the slide deck exactly as it appeared on the widow's quarterly statements, in the same font, the same column, the same formatting. Underneath it, in red, is a single sentence. This is not a Wells Fargo product. It never was. This case was a slow, deliberate theft from people who trusted the man at the desk, But the case on the right-hand side of your screen is even darker, and the woman in it never saw it coming. Click it now.